Hey, welcome to the Runaways podcast. My name is Cody, and today we have a lot to talk about. We have Tampa coming up in a week. We have Zen just getting LL'd from Blitz.
What? They banned all the books.
Okay, well, it looks like they banned all the books, so scratch all that. That's what we're talking about tonight. So to join me this week, I have, as always, Dan. And Dan said he wanted to talk about the banning of all the books, but first he wanted to talk about LL. So we will start our intro by telling me, how'd your LL weekend go? I know we just got kicked off that. Everyone's been excited about it. So Dan, how's LL been for you?
Yeah, it was a good weekend again. I only got to play one event, but I ran it back with Chain. Didn't really change the list. I managed to win, had a tough final against Oldham. Love playing that matchup, very nostalgic. Lots of disruption to play around, but I don't know. I just love the format so much. And it had me like feeling pretty down on CC just because of like how enjoyable all of my Chain games are versus like when I play CC, it's like, well, I hope I draw Ardivore in the first 3 turns, or I hope my opponent doesn't. So I don't know. It was really nice change of pace again. But now everything's different in CC, so I'm excited about that again.
True. LL has been exciting. And James, I saw that you took an I guess it's unusual LL deck. It did pretty well with it. How how has your week been? Welcome back.
So, hi. I only played in 2 skirmishes all season because Blitz sucks and didn't want to play this season. And then I only got 2 LO skirmishes in my area, and I brought Oldhim. And the first one, I got to the finals with Fino, and though I can never face him because he's on Prism, whatever. We share an income, so we split that. And then the following day, I got to top 4 and then played Fino again. So I just conceded and saved us like 50 minutes or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I just appreciate being able to bully all the people that don't really know the matchups. Like one of my friends sat down against me with Chain and he was like, "Do you just want to like concede so we can go get lunch?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. Show to me that you know how to beat me with Chain." And I won that game. So yeah, that was funny. And that was just the summary of the whole weekend of just, oh yes, I miss my old man.
Yeah. Oldhim could be scary if you haven't put the time for Chain to play that matchup. Um, I I'm in the opposite side. None of the old hymns will fatigue me. I'm like all prepped for the fatigue. Like I had my top 4 match was going to be against an old hymn. And like I went outside like between the match and I was doing all the math again because it's been a little bit since I did the math. And I was like, how many cards should I side in here? And I did like, okay, uh, 68 cards makes sense for how I want to do my fatigue. So I decided to submit 68 cards and I sit down and he goes, I can't fatigue you. You know how to stack. I'm just going to race you. And I was like, that's not going to work any better. And I was like, please force me to do it. I was like counting. I have my pitch stack going.
Dude, I just wanted to summon Earthstone. I never got to.
I know it was so pretty. It was like my stack was like great. I was ready to go, and he's just like, "Nah, I can't do this against you." Connor, did you get to play some LL? How did that go for you?
LL on Talishar. Doing some more brewing always. I played some Blitz this weekend. Got to experience the Zen Nightmare in Blitz. It was like the games were just so insane. Like while playing it, you were like, this can't keep happening. And it didn't end up keep happening. So this is the one weekend to play the Zen Mirror if you want to.
True. I think that's about enough about LL because we had some pretty exciting news. Though I will say I love LL and I can't wait for Chicago to be able to actually dig into the format more. I'm hoping after we dig into the format more, I still love the format. I'm expecting that's the case because I get to play Chain, but we will see. But I had a show planned that had completely different topics in this, and then I don't know what 4 hours ago, 5 hours ago, they just I think accidentally published. Is that what happened? Did they like accidentally publish it, or did they mean to publish the new?
No, this
BNR?
was scheduled.
Okay.
It was good.
Yeah, it was on the calendar for 9 p.m. or 5 p.m. rather.
Okay, because it just felt like it
Eastern
came out of
time.
nowhere, and all of a sudden, all the books are banned. So if you haven't heard, the cards that got banned from CC are Ardivore, Bonds of Ancestry, Cashin, Orion, Tome of Aetherwind, Tome of Divinity, Tome of Findel, Tome of Firebrand. This is by far the largest banning I think we've ever seen. Bar none, a massive shakeup to the game. And I will not monopolize all the time, but who wants to start on this massive change? Any point of it that you want to talk about? Someone has to go, or I'll talk for an hour.
I mean, I'll say a quick thing. I love that they have shaken up the format. This is all I asked for. Like, the impact of the change is very, like, I can't say, like, this was a good or bad move. I'd have to try it out. But I love that they did a big change, and I love the direction, like, where they're trying to take variants in terms of, like, reducing card draw. I think that's all good. I don't completely buy into, like, reducing your health to 0 being the only, um thing to address in terms of player agency. I think the cards that they mentioned in the article, like Siren's Call and a bunch of others, should maybe be looked at too, but that's okay. I think those just give like the illusion of agency, which is not actual agency. But overall, I don't know. I'm pumped. Seems good. Lots to dig into tonight.
I'm really excited for this format, mostly because it's just so different, and I was so down on the past like 2 formats, especially everything to do with MSD. And I don't know, I haven't been this excited for a long time, but who's to say if this is actually good? The meta could still just be shit, but it's going to be a very pleasant exploration phase that we're going to be going through in the next how many weeks till Worlds? That many weeks?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to go through. I'm glad we have 6 weeks or so for actual Worlds prep. But Connor, what are your initial thoughts?
Kind of had to do the Art of War and Bonds ban. And then while you're in there, while you're tinking around, like just prune the hedges. You know what I mean? Like all these cards that are that kind of snowbally, like kind of obnoxious card effects that just like let people run away with games. Like Tome of Divinity, that play style, especially with the draw 2 angel, you're like Tome, draw 2 angel, Tome. It's just like and then Arclight or whatever. And I think they mentioned it in the article too. Like that's just the game ends right there and it snowballs so quickly. So while you're gonna like admit the format's not great, whatever, like this is an awesome time to go in, take out all these kind of problem cards. They kind of remind me of like the Berserk and like Crown of Seeds ban, where it's like they're not a problem right now, but then they limit future design space. They've got something in the file that they think will line up with some of these really well. Um, or just the cards in general are just kind of like cash in is just it's just a pot of greed. It's just draw 2, like the most clean draw 2 you've ever seen in your life. I've put it in so many like Runeblade decks, whatever. Like all my Viscera decks are playing cash in because it's just like perfect in that deck. And that card eventually will be obnoxious. And so I think it's good to get rid of it now. Because when people get to play with the cards and have them be like part of their deck or whatever, like they get like they develop feelings for them. Like they're like there's people that are upset about the Art of War ban, right? Because they've been playing it, they love the card. It's iconic. It's like one of the first big cards they bought in the game or whatever. Now you don't want those people feeling about Tome of Firebrand when you have to go ban Tome also. So you just do it now. No one falls in love with Tome of Firebrand. No one's heart gets broken or whatever, and you just get the problem children out of the way.
I just want to follow up on Art of War since you mentioned it there, Connor. I think to your point, like this is a good time to ban Art of War. Like I think everyone knew it was coming eventually, right? Like comparing this to like Belittle, which they're both cards that are like clearly a little out of bounds and it's always going to be slammed into like every go by deck, and some can abuse it more than others. But I think like because there's no defined meta, right? Like this is a great time to get rid of Art of War. It's like you're not attached to it, like you're saying. Where I think for the Belittle ban, it was like the glue that held Fi in the metagame, and then they just like stripped it during pro season when we had like ice decks dominating. So I think this is like a great time to do it, and hopefully people aren't too bummed. I get it, like it's such a what do you call it? I don't know, well-known card for the game, right? Like you think of Flesh and Blood, you think like E-Strike, CNC, Art of War. So sad to see it go, but we have LL, and hopefully this means they're going to keep pushing LL and play Art of Wars there. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, my initial impressions of this is that it's very courageous. I think it's really cool that they're willing to make that big of a change. Um, these are not so. Besides Art of War, no one was really asking for any of this. This is nice that they like sat down, took a look at their game, and said, "How do we want our game to function?" And then they made a massive call on how they want their game to function, and they like were willing to take the risk and stick their neck out for it. I'll say this is like probably the most exciting bands I've ever seen. Personally, I I at no point saw these bands and was upset. Like I saw these bands and I was immediately excited for the format. on top of being excited for the format, I was excited for Rosetta all of a sudden. Because, like, to be honest, we haven't seen a lot of the Majestics for the set, right? At this point. And we haven't seen even all the rares, I don't believe, for the set, or like any legendaries. So there's still obviously power somewhere in the set. But looking at the cards that we've seen in the set, and then before this ban, looking at the meta, I was just like, none of these heroes even fit in the meta. The heroes don't matter. I'm excited for 3 cards. The Majestics would have to be busted in order for any of these decks even be playable, and I really don't want to see just another busted deck jump in, to be honest. But then after these bans and the whole shakeup in the meta, I went, these Majestics only have to be good, and then some of these heroes are actually probably playable, like worth digging into, and that is super exciting, and that I think is reflective of a really good ban, in my opinion. I would be curious to see, what do you think? What decks are like the big winners from this ban? Just off the cuff, we haven't tested anything. We literally have talked about it for like 4 hours. That's about it. Like,
I mean, every aggro deck, like nothing could come close to Zen's output, right? And I think that's brought way in line now. So like any aggro deck like KO, Levia, they're all playable again. They don't just automatically lose if you parent to Zen, which is exciting. Yeah, we should go deep on Zen at some point, but let's finish this topic first.
Out of it, are kind of like your defensive decks that struggle against big go wide decks, like five card hand decks, like your Victor, your new things like that. The game becomes a lot more about small edges, incremental advantage, kind of like the heavy hitters meta was, and so maybe your Hatchet Dory, your Victor can really benefit from a ban like this.
My first thought on seeing the BNR update was that Brute's probably really good. A lot of people are going to just take out Balance of Justice from their deck completely, so the only reason to probably play it now is to have a sideboard card into Blood Rush Bellow or whatever. So, like, that's probably a huge buff, because, like, the only way you're drawing cards right now in, like, most decks. And then I think that Rhinar card's pretty good. I don't know if it pushes him enough to be playable, but that card's very good. And KO is just already a solid aggro deck, and then Levia is just really scary. So I feel like Brute's probably the biggest winner.
yeah, I think I agree with Levia. I think Enigma got a massive upgrade here. You don't need to hide
That's
that.
true.
I also think that this doesn't make Azalea's pretty happy with this as well. I mean, we all practiced Azalea, and it was just like most of the other matchups were fine to play. Zen was, kind of a struggle against good Zen. And for the most part, like, you're fine with Enigmas existing, you're fine with new existing. So I think most people won't consider Azalea got a buff, but I think Azalea's kind of happy with this, at least so far. And so I would agree with those. I think the format looks a little slower so far from what we've seen, which is possible. So we'll see what else comes out from that. I think Prism is pretty hard hit, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone finds another way to try and play Prism that still makes them relevant. If everyone forgets about Prism and then Prism like pops up with some like slightly different build and people aren't teched for it anymore, that could be, a big deal moving forward. But Dan, you wanted to talk about Zen and the big Zen changes here. What do you
Yeah, I
think
think
this
we
did
should.
to Zen?
Yeah, because like Zen defined the last meta, right? So I think we have to start
Yeah.
there. I don't know exactly what it does. I don't think the format will be warped by Zen anymore. Because his range is smaller, he just doesn't win the game on the spot when he draws Art of War anymore, right? It doesn't exist. So I think he will still be a playable deck. I don't know if he will be like a meta dependent deck or just like a established good deck. I think he's somewhere in that range. He might just be able to exist independent of the meta, or he might just be like an Enigma counter, right? If she rises to
Mhm.
the top. But I don't think he's going to warp the format post ban. This is with no testing, obviously. My opinion might change next week, which opens the door for those other aggro decks like the Brutes and mid range decks to jump in, like the Warriors. But I think it also should mean that new sees less play, because like new is inherently very powerful and like she'll still see a lot of play, I'm sure. But part of the reason you brought new is because you're like 80% to beat every Zen you see. which is super appealing. But I don't think Zen's meta share will be nearly, not even close to like what it used to be. So if new leaves, then we also might see like decks like Victor show up a little more. And now we're back to this like heavy hitters perceived open meta of like all these decks countering each other. So it's kind of just choose your favorite deck. So we'll see.
I mean, I would argue that in the long run, it could be fine for Zen
Mm.
if people stop packing hate in every single deck for Zen.
Yeah, and there's so much hate out there now, right? I don't.
So, like, imagine not now. Obviously, people are going to keep the hate in right after the ban. But if
Yeah.
we're looking,
Oh, people cut weakest.
that's what
like,
I'm saying.
my
If we're looking
God.
at Worlds and Weakest Link is now cut from decks, like,
It seems unlikely with these new heroes, though, right? Like,
I don't know. It depends how they play. I don't see some of the rune blades caring like about no blocks. Obviously, if Aurora becomes like super popular, then
yeah, I think just the lightning decks
But
probably.
I think
Mhm.
there's like a world where we don't see every single deck running 3 of them anymore, right?
Yeah, no,
So
that's fair.
if we live in this world that Worlds comes back around and we might have another 5 moment where like Zen's dropped off, but no one's teching for it now. So even though it has less damage,
Mhm.
no one's stopping it from ever playing its hand. So it's just playing its hands every round. And like maybe that's good enough. So I don't think it's like lights out for Zen, like you were saying. And I could see a world where Zen ends
I
up
agree.
crawling back and being a good deck for a tournament, right?
I agree. I think it probably is lights out for the new matchup, though.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
I don't know what you're doing
that's
there.
way over. Yeah, yeah.
Like,
It
good
was
luck.
like
Yeah, I
near-
don't know how you would ever win that.
I don't think it's possible.
No, I like Victor too. Even it's just like you gotta stack like 3 ancestrals, I guess. I don't know. Have
Yeah, we'll
fun.
see it.
I'm not solving that
Maybe
one.
it has a lot more. No, I don't know. I don't see how. Not. I think Victor might actually be harder than new now, just for the fact that the way we were beating Victor
Mhm.
was by setting up, like playing really slow, and even some rounds just like passing, because they'd get stuck with block cards, and then we'd set up like 2 anthems, and then just like blast most of their health and armor off in one turn, and then you could play the game after that. But like you can't do that anymore,
Yep.
so you can't play small hands with them. Now, there's a chance the new matchup not gets better, but feels like it's more playable if the deck starts incorporating more 2-card hands because it doesn't need bonds, it doesn't need gust wave, it doesn't need these cards anymore. So now you're putting in like E-strikes and you're putting in, I know a lot of people are running those, but you could end up running a lot more 2-card playable hands. Still, matchup's not great, but there's some hope there, right? There's some difference.
Yeah, I could see Victor. You might have to be like all in on Cosmic Awakening and just like playing towards that as your win con. Kind of just like wearing them down and like trading 2-card plays and blocking out a lot so they can't play their clash cards until you get there.
I do like attacking for 20. It's pretty good.
Attacking.
It'll be interesting. I'll definitely put some time into Zen. I want to see how he exists now because I really enjoyed the deck outside of like the power spike turns that made him so hated and like so unenjoyable to play and play against. So hopefully he exists after like a couple months. We can forgive him and he's just this like pretty cool mid-rangey aggro ninja deck that can tutor every turn.
Yeah, I think it'll take a couple of months for people's hate to simmer down, but at least now,
Yeah.
if you bring it to locals after these bans, no one's gonna get upset with you. They shouldn't have been getting upset
Yeah.
before.
I can't say the same for LL,
Yeah,
but that's
they
a different
shouldn't have been
topic.
getting upset before, but like maybe they really shouldn't now, right? Let's talk about the other one that seems to have gotten a huge hit, and that is Kano. Kano seems to get hit pretty massively. James, I know you've been playing a decent amount of Kano. What do you think about these changes?
So I get the feeling that Kano's still going to be playable, but now like he's not as explosive, and I feel like the average player isn't going to be able to stack with him. Like the Tome of Aether Winds were a huge crutch people leaned on to stack, and if we're going to a slower meta, then they're just not going to be able to do that. But for like your Majins of the world, then you're probably fine if you need to stack and play that. I also like we don't know how good the other like the 2 new wizards are and how much like AB and everything people are going to be packing. So like I have no idea where he's going to sit by the time Worlds comes around. Like but I think he's fine. I wouldn't say he's just unplayable because he lost just Tome, like whatever.
I mean, I agree. I think he's playable. I think he's a lot more susceptible to Oasis Respite now. Like he just
Yeah.
like especially stacking. Like without being able to draw all the extra cards to like go above Oasis, then I think he's in like a big trouble. Especially if like they ever see two. They like set one, hold one for the rest of the game. You basically can't win against anyone if they have any normal amount of AB. Because they can't draw enough cards to get around it. Even one Oasis is like a problem. And if decks are running Oasis, then like just go off for cycle is a lot harder. A lot more dubious, at least. So if it kind of feels like maybe the deck ends up in a spot where if you're prepared for Kano, you can beat Kano. And if you're not prepared for Kano, you'll still lose to Kano. That's like my initial impression.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I do think it's healthy to have counterplay to being stacked, if that is the outcome, like you're saying. Because it's also like if you're sitting on an Oasis the whole game, like your Kano opponent knows that. And I don't play a ton of Kano, but there are ways to like pivot your strategy, right? To like kind of play a wildfire to bait out the Oasis and then be like, now I'm going to pitch stack again and get him next cycle. Which is more interesting than if you don't kill me in 10 turns, you die immediately with nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that you get a big payoff if you're able to correctly pitch stack and memorize 20 card sequences. I think that's pretty cool. So hopefully that still exists.
I think the deck's good. I'm hoping it goes back to being the meta exploiter versus just one of the best decks in the game.
Yep.
Where they're like, ooh, nobody's running like Oasis and stuff. I'm going to come in and steal a tournament. Like that's how he used to be. And then you'd be like, oh man, that deck's good when no one's teching for it. And then now it's just like, yeah, you can tech for this. Half the decks in the game can't have any hope of ever winning a matchup, even with all the tech. And then the other ones, we're going to flip some coins. So it's good to maybe he goes back to that type of style. What other decks?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Like him and Zen were doing the same thing. They were just reducing your health to 0 on the first turn potentially. Like nobody wants that.
I mean, it did win an LL Battle Harden as a completely CC legal deck. I just can't stress that enough. How funny that is.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that was pretty messed up.
Yep, but not anymore.
I mean, to be fair, I think Zen could do the same, but it is a good point.
Okay, what else? I guess Levia lost Art of War for the people who are playing Art of War. So I guess they're forced to run a better build now.
Oh no!
Oh no! Any other decks that jump out to you from these bannings immediately? Connor, what do you think on the mech side?
I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I think these bans are good for mech. If the ceiling on these other aggro decks goes down a little bit, Dash has really consistent kind of spiky power herself, and so she can keep up with those aggro matchups. And if decks besides new that are defensive get really popular, she is really powerful with her pistol setups, and so I think that those matchups get good too. So, I mean, I'm always an optimist. Plus, we have the armory deck coming out. It's a good time to be a mech, but I think these bans definitely help. I think they help all the kind of more fair decks in the format.
But what about Dash IO?
Oh, she's doing a ton of stuff. I'm super excited about all these new, like that new 0 for 3 that if you crank or boost it, you get to put a Steam counter on something. That card's legit. That card is very good.
But she lost her books.
I don't know. The books were like fine, but they were like free-ish cards, but they were kind of annoying.
I think most had already cut it by now anyway. I think most Dash.io lists I saw weren't even running the books anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, you could. It would just make things so awkward for you sometimes, where like you just see it and you just don't have the horsepower to like push through the brick on top. And so it was always kind of more of a risk than it seemed.
Yeah, I think my overall initial impressions are that we should be going into like a mid-rangey meta. The real question is, what do we get from the new set Rosetta that kind of shakes some of those ideas up? I think if like Rosetta didn't exist coming out, I would think we're going into like a mid-range meta. But there's potential with things like Florian, like OTK Florian. They even put it in the BNR article that there's OTK Florian build before the set's even out, right? Most people knew that after looking at some of the things. There's a way to do that, but they put that in the article. Or just, Lightning in general, or the new Wizards. Maybe they have some play styles that shake up, if it's mid-range, Florian's probably super happy to just try and OTK you and sit behind and make a million rune chance, right? Any other initial impressions of kind of what the meta is going to look like?
No, I agree with you. Like, it feels mid-rangey, but we have like 5 new decks with like a newly defined Zen as well, and I don't
Think so?
know if something like is like pushing the biggest numbers in the format, then maybe the meta adjusts like it did with Zen, and I don't know. Time will tell. I'm glad they did this when they did, so we can be excited and also have like an evolving meta. Because I don't know. This is like there's too many heroes. If like Worlds was in 3 weeks now to be like how are you possibly picking a deck? You're just like throwing darts. So yeah, time will tell. I don't think Fi will be in the meta. I'll say that. That's the other big impact of this ban. The
No.
hits keep coming.
That's fair. James, any thoughts on what the meta shapes out or looks like?
I agree with you. Like I said earlier, it's probably going to just be closer to like heavy hitters or whatever. I'm hoping that my life gain lady is playable, but then if she is, that might be miserable if you're not like a stacking deck or something.
Oh, it's max time. Max is going to rise if it's slow.
Dude, I hope
slow
so.
deck meta.
But like the heavy hitter meta just doesn't work with these Mistveil heroes, right? Like Enigma just stomps on slow decks, right? And mid-rangey decks, and then News out here doing the same thing because those decks are playing powerful blues usually. So like
I-
it's I don't know, it's gonna be a weird dynamic. It's like heavy hitters, but also there's Mistveil like disrupting it entirely, and then 4 new heroes and a redefined Zen.
Yeah, Enigma's probably going to be really good. I
Yeah,
don't want to
I
live
am
in that
It's
world.
gonna be a fun ride.
I'm expecting some rune chants to kind of keep Enigma in line a little bit.
Yep.
Any of the 3 rune chant heroes, to be fair. Enigma really doesn't want to deal with rune chants. And if you stack up any real amount of rune chants, you're just blowing up all of the ward. Because currently Enigma can't put out like 10 spectral shields, right? Like they're gonna put out like 2 spectral shields, and then they're gonna have like a 2 ward, a 3 ward, a 3 ward, a 4 ward, and you're gonna be like 10 rune chants. And they're gonna be like, no, all of my all of my
No.
ward. Like at one point you're gonna send 1 rune chant in, and it's gonna blow up a whole Maragai. Like so also they did release a couple of tools that let you like bounce some of the auras and whatnot as well. Like a really easy way to get rid of Maragai that way. So if becomes unburdened, I think there are a good enough counters there potentially to keep her in check. But she did get a pretty big win here, I would say. Okay, I am more excited for Worlds than I was before. I'm more excited for this format. I'm more excited to just get started like practicing. I was kind of like, okay, back to practicing. And then now I'm just like super pumped to get all the cards this weekend, find out what we're going to get at Tampa. Not to mention, play in Tampa, but find out all the new cards. Then as soon as we get back, just like sit down, let's grind Worlds. Like I am pumped. I would expect that's been the sentiment. Reading Twitter has
for sure
been
the
like
sentiment.
everyone's excited about the
Yep.
bans.
So
I
excited.
wish we didn't have to wait on the cards now.
Yeah. Now.
But it's good because we got to focus on sealed still. We're not no CC yet. That's next week.
Sealed is this weekend. Hopefully people who are listening are going to Tampa. I think it's going to be a great time. It'll be a lot of fun. Everyone that I've talked to says they're basically going, so it could just be everyone from everywhere. But opening weekends are a lot of fun. Any other comments on the bans before we move on?
Why didn't they
Yeah,
ban? Oh, why didn't
I
they
think we're saying the same
ban?
thing. You say it.
Oh God, why didn't they ban the most powerful tome in the game, Tomultai?
Oh.
Illusionist favoritism.
Already banned.
No, I really want to know what's up with the lack of codex mention or ban. Like these cards are
right?
literally books that draw 2 or more cards.
Game is allowed to have strong cards.
Yeah, I appreciate that they like explain some other cards, which I think should be banned anyway. I really hope they like explore the restricted list in CC. I think it's been like great in LO. Like when I'm playing Chain and my opponent warmongers me and I take like 6 blood, I'm like, wow, that really sucks. Like that was really strong for them. But it's like, oh wait, they can't do it again. Like now I'm free. And that feels pretty good. Like playing Vincent at my armories right now and I just get warmongers like every other turn. Like, what am I doing? I can't play the game. Which I'm sure they tested with warmongers in the environment. So maybe they think it's fine. But I would love to see cards like that and like Codex of Frailty if they want to keep it in, be restricted.
I mean, I could see restrictions. I think I'm fine with Codex not being banned at all. Like, It's obviously functioning within the classes how it's supposed to function within those classes, and it makes sense. If every deck could play the Codex, then we'd probably have an issue. But it's like whatever. I like people having strong cards. I'm like in classes having strong cards. I'm hoping that doesn't go away with this, pretty big step back. I know they're limiting the draw potential, which is fine. I'm just hoping we don't continue to see down power of classes, because that's one of the fun things that we found out from LL is like a lot of things are strong in LL, but it's also like really fun to play.
Agree.
And it felt like in most of my games I had decisions to make, except for when I was playing against Zen.
When everything is broken, nothing is.
That's my bigger, I guess, gripe. I wouldn't call it CC gripe at all. I'm fully on board to test what they have implemented and see how it plays out. But I think in LL, like Zen is a huge issue still. Like that deck's OTK potential has not been minimized at all. Like without bonds, I've killed people on my first turn of the game multiple times. So I hope they look at restricting Art of War in that format, or Bonds of Ancestry still. Just a little something. But if they want an OTK deck, they want an OTK deck, and that's fine. I think he will suffer a little more into like the decks that can actually disrupt, which maybe that's the intent there. But as a chain player, I still expect to lose every time I face a Zen, and that feels bad. But that's okay.
Okay, let's go on to podcast questions. These questions are asked by premium members of our Discord. If you'd like to be able to ask questions, view videos that we put up, engage with the team, grab deck lists from tournaments that we post, feel free to join in the link below. So first question here from Renzo says, how long did you guys play before you got good at the game? Or if previously into card games, you can give that example as well. So Connor, how long did it take you to get good?
Say I'm not good yet. It hasn't happened yet. No, I would say it took me about, I started when I was young. I was like 14 or whatever when I really got into card games. And so that kind of natural learning curve, I feel like I hit pretty close to my current abilities, like a year and a half, 2 years in. But I've also just been grinding for a long time. I've been grinding my whole life, kids. I've been playing a lot of Magic Online for many years. And so switching over to FAB, I immediately was like, I love this. I want to be really, really good at this. And it didn't take me too long to feel like I was as good in FAB as I was at Magic. But now I feel like I'm better at FAB than I am at Magic, honestly. Like I go back to Magic and get smashed, but I still think I'm good at Flesh and Blood. So I think that time is always, I would say probably a year and a half of really trying hard, studying, always paying attention to everything. But also don't fret if you aren't good yet. Sometimes it's not about the amount of time, it's about the teacher. I've had a lot of really good senseis over my years, and they can really help you unlock some levels for you.
Dan?
I forgot my response. Right. When did I? Oh yeah. I mean, everyone should always be forever continuing to get good at whatever they're doing. Right. Continuous improvement, and especially like with my mindset and mental game, it's like always evolving in the way I look at the game. But I think I probably had like a break point at like 6 months where I thought I was good at the game, and then after like a year, I realized I didn't know how to play the game at all. And I think it was about a year it took me to like feel like I was a pretty good player. And I think anyone who gets good in less than a year, it's like pretty impressive. Like this game's really hard. It didn't help that I started playing Blitz Dorinthia, where like you just don't block ever, and you're like you deal with it. That really messed up my start, but I think we got there. And I agree with Connor. Like having the right teachers and people around you allows you to speed up. I'm sure it's easier now because of all the like resources out there, right? You could probably get the hang in like 6 months or so, but I wouldn't expect it to be faster than that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's hard to answer because I think your bar for good just continually changes. I look back at like my initial breakout performances, which was like top 4 at nationals playing chain, and then immediately top 8ing calling after that with chain. But I think I was just like a chain expert at the time. Like I don't consider myself actually have been good at the game at that time, because I think back on it and my skills now are just like infinitely better than how I was back then as a player. But that's how I feel about every tournament I've played. if I think about the tournament after that and the tournament after that, and if I even just think about like worlds of this last worlds, I feel like I'm a much better player now than I was at that worlds. And just like this just is a continual thing. If you're not feeling that way, that's probably something that you should work on. But if I think back to any of my tournaments, like I can always in my head figure out, well, I didn't look at the game this way. I didn't categorize these things in the game how I categorize them now. So I've improved in these other skills, right? And you continue to get better at other decks. So I think it's just a continual improvement of getting good. And it's more of like what level is the community currently at, and what level are you at? And the delta between those two are kind of if you're good or not. And the delta continually shortens typically over the lifetime of the games because it's easier to catch up than it is to stay ahead. But also the whole as everything's getting up, you're also supposed to try and rise with it. So if it surpasses you, then that's how you get bad. I think that's more of how you look at it. So you're never just good and then good forever. You're just like might be good at like one tournament, right? James, anything? Any other thoughts?
I've been playing card games since I was a small kid. I was like on and off until I was an adult with like a real income. And it took me like a solid year or two to even get good at Pokemon. And I played other card games all the way up to the top level. And it usually took me like a year to get to that point. Um, Playing Fab, I was like, I resonate really what you just said, Cody, about the like the delta because like a lot of people feel like they're really good and then they like go to the next stage of play and then they realize they like aren't very good. And like within like my local area, I started during Monarch, and within that season, like going to an RTN was like my first tournament ever. By the end of the season, I was one of the best players in my area. And looking back, I was a terrible player back then. But it only took me like 1 month to get ahead of the curve, but then the game was new. I was playing Prism back then, which played completely different than everything else. People like barely knew what my cards did. And then come to like Nats, like I felt like I was like should have been like the average player there. And then I just like steadily got good. But like I would say by the time like Worlds came around the first year, which was like a year and a half of play for me at that point, I felt like that's like when I got good. But like as you said, like it's just got to keep playing, and like every time there's like a huge meta shift, like sure I can take things with me that I've learned, but like I got to relearn all of this stuff. And I don't know, being on the team definitely leveled me up a bit, just being surrounded by other good players. And I think that the game is still in its infancy, and a lot of people like the best players in Fab are not going to be the best players of all time, probably. Like the best player is probably some random poker player that doesn't play the game right now. And I don't think we've even come close to seeing like a 10 out of 10 player for the game. Like our best minds in the game, just like the game's too new and they only have to be so good to be ahead of the curve. So like if the best players are sevens and they're eights, that's good enough. And hopefully like our goal is eventually all to become that 10, but like will that ever happen? I don't know.
Yeah, it's for sure a moving target.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question here by Kraft says, with a new set of heroes, what is the best strategy to test them for rated events after the release? Talking about calling a Lion in specific. I would ask, do you have time to even test all the heroes? Like
That's where I was going to go to.
Step
Like,
one.
there's so much to talk about here.
Yeah. Step one is, can you physically even test all the heroes? If the answer to this is no, and the answer to that is no if you don't have enough people and don't have enough time. And if the answer to that is no, you don't care about testing all the heroes. Like you legitimately just don't, you're not allowed to care. You might need to just test a handful of heroes or a couple of heroes or none of the heroes and play something you already know. Depends how much time you actually have. But if you say, I can test some of the heroes, then it's, I need to identify what I already think is good. You need to have a reason to test the hero. If you have no reason to test the hero, like if you look at a Cilio and you're just like, I have no idea how this deck wins, I can't see anything that's good about it, you don't have the time to try and figure out if something's good about it. You just need to say nope and push that hero off to the side and then be like, but I have a good idea for, I think Florian would be strong if I did this, this, and this. cool, go test Florian because you actually have something to work on. And that's, for most people, you have limited time. So do that. If there's something there, continue with it. If it's not, then you jump on something else, but you need to have something comfortable in your back pocket. I don't know if anyone has something else there.
Yeah, I think in terms of time efficiency, like your approach kind of has to be analysis first and actually playing second.
Mhm.
Like you need to have some kind of process to like break down the cards that are available to like determine what is worth testing. It helps a lot when there's a defined meta, so you can kind of figure out where these things fit in. But I would start by doing some like card value analysis, kind of like identifying what are the power cards for this that this hero has access to, and like mathing out how they fit into the build, how they fit with like your weapon options. Um, yeah, I think you kind of want to like do a little upfront thinking instead of playing, especially if time restrictions are in play. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Probably the answer, yeah, is like you don't test everything, right? Unless you have a group that you can delegate to. You got to kind of identify either like what fits your play style or what stands out in your analysis and spend a little time. If it's not working, go back to like something reliable, especially if it's like a 1 or 2 week turnaround you're looking at.
Okay. Renko asks, so with the neat aggro bans, who who is going to stop Enigma again? I think we mentioned that a little bit. Rune Chance, Azalea,
Green Chance, maybe Dash,
Dash,
maybe Zen.
Azalea,
Probably not 5.
other Enigmas.
Mhm, mhm.
Maybe some wizards if they can figure out some new tech for that matchup as well. Also, people sleep it on like Levia can win that matchup it's not bad. KO can definitely win that matchup depending on how the Enigma's built.
How's
Like
the Reinar matchup? Like, doesn't Tim get him there?
no.
No,
That makes
it's not
sense.
strong enough.
The thing is like in theory, Enigma can beat almost all these decks I just named. It just can't do all of it at the same time. It can't also win the mirror and also beat the brutes and also beat Azalea and maybe also beat the Rune Chance. Like it just can't do all of the things. So the chances are they're going to have to hedge and they're going to be weak in some massive areas. I know we internally had like a deck that was, I don't know, it was like 90% into KO for Enigma. But like then we started cutting stuff and we're like, well, we can't run all these things. We got to make this matchup better. Man, the mirror is almost unplayable unless we do this. And then by the time you get down to like a deck that's like actually has real matchups, we went back to KO and we're like, this is a lot closer than it used to be. And that's just kind of how Enigma is. So it depends on kind of how the meta goes, but there are a lot of different builds that can do something to Enigma, depending on how the Enigma is built. Okay, next, last question here is from Millen. It says, why do you think Blood Rush is not on the ban list? He doesn't like that the brute card is not just generic, like AoE is. But they also banned some cards from here that were class cards.
I
So what
think
do
it's
you?
the exact same reason that codexes aren't banned. It's relegated to 3 heroes, and they got to have powerful cards.
Yeah, they mentioned it in the article specifically. And for like Blood Rush specifically in Brute, it's like you're just converting 1 resource to 4 damage usually. Sometimes it's 6. That's like the spike you're trying to play towards. Like 1 resource to 4 is fine. It's powerful. It's not like game breaking. The 6 is pushing, but it's like the Brute pool doesn't allow you to go past that, right? Like you can't play 5 0 costers that get +2 in a turn. They just don't exist. Um, and you have to like work for your action points, right? You don't innately have go again. You have to like set up an agility or draw wild rides or roll scabs. So yeah, they mentioned in the article. It's just like they can control the way that it fits in the class versus like these generics that will 100% be abused at some point. And they don't generate things to discard to Ardmore, right? It's like you're not like generating a 6 power attack token and then discarding it.
Yeah, I think it's fine for decks to have powerful cards. And it needs to have it. Connor, you have something on this?
Yeah, I think they need a balance of justice to be playable still. if they ban Blood Rush Bellow,
True.
there's nothing to crack my balance against. And so I think they just wanted to. I mean, I'm kind of joking, but it's also kind of true. Like, it is one of the premier headpieces in the game right now, and it's basically just an anti-brute card, which I think is a good thing, though.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. I mean, maybe it's ends up being too strong. Let's get other strong cards or something, because we did, nerf a lot of power out of some other things. I could see how it could eventually become an issue, but I think that's more of a scab skin issue than anything else. I almost never just lost because my opponent's just like, I play I play a couple of my power cards. It's usually like a power card mixed with something else that's not supposed to be there. Like maybe they mixed it with an Art of War, which they can't do anymore, or maybe they mix it with scab skin roll, and then you're just like, okay, I guess I lose now. Like that's typically how that does. Most decks now have armor and block enough of that to deal with these big turns. You just kind of have to give them all the momentum, right? Cool. So the last thing I want to talk about is we're going to Tampa a couple of days. Like this is coming out tomorrow. Most of us are flying out on Thursday to get there. We have Friday. It's going to be crazy because one, you have the world premiere, but then you have 2 more events after that, and then cramming that night to try and win the calling. But I will say, if you're out there, if you run into anyone on the team, feel free to come up, say hi. We love interacting with everyone who comes out. I'm super excited to go to this event. I don't remember the last time I was actually this excited for an
Yeah, I'm
event.
like
It's
out of my mind excited.
yeah, it's like
I'm not gonna be able to sleep the
too
night
excited.
before.
I'm more excited than I should be for it just being a calling, and I've gone to things like Worlds and a bunch of other stuff. But this one, it's just like pure excitement. There's like no nerves. There's no like anything else that's like mixed in.
Dude,
with
I'm
it.
not gonna pack any cards. Like I'm just bringing an empty deck box and sleeves. That's so nice.
Yeah.
There aren't all these like feelings of like all this prep that you've done, all this like buildup of like your final test type of thing that sometimes you get whenever you're like on a cycle for a while. This is just like, dude, I'm just going out and we're having fun, and I'm going to see if I can crack this day up type of like feeling, and it's super cool. So if you're able to make it out, definitely come up, say hi. Anything else before you take off here? Nope. Well, with that, we're out. Okay, goodbye, everyone. See you in Tampa. I can't wait.
Yeah, we're getting rid of the envelope here,
7
but
envelope
What we could do
in
here is go ahead
darkness.
and play the envelope.
All 3 pitches of envelope and darkness.